My name is Cornell Williams, and at 34, I never expected my own family would try to humiliate me at my own hotel. Growing up poor in Chicago, my wealthy Uncle Raymond and his family always looked down on us. When I received an invitation to our family reunion at the Azure Palm Resort in Miami, I was surprised but hopeful. Little did they know, I built that luxury hotel from the ground up. The expression on their faces when they discovered they had given the hotel owner the worst room in the building was priceless. If you've ever been underestimated by family, hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned the tables on them. I grew up in a small apartment on the south side of Chicago. Our neighborhood wasn't the worst, but it certainly wasn't where the privileged lived. My dad worked 2 jobs, one as a janitor at the local high school and another stocking shelves at a grocery store on weekends. Mom cleaned houses for wealthy families in the suburbs. Despite their backbreaking work, we always seemed to be one paycheck away from disaster. Uncle Raymond, my father's older brother, lived a completely different life. He had married into money with Aunt Pamela, whose family owned a chain of successful car dealerships across Illinois. They lived in a sprawling house in the North Shore area, with a pool, tennis court, and enough space to fit our entire apartment building. Whenever we saw them at mandatory family events like funerals or the occasional holiday gathering, their children, my cousins Zachary and Madison, always had the newest toys, designer clothes, and stories about their exotic vacations. Madison was 2 years younger than me, and Zachary was a year older. While they weren't openly cruel, their privilege oozed from every pore. I remember once when I was 12, our car broke down. The repair would cost $800, which might as well have been $1 million to us. My father swallowed his pride and called Uncle Raymond to ask for a loan. Uncle Raymond declined, suggesting my dad manage his finances better and build an emergency fund, as if poverty was simply poor planning. That night, I saw my father cry for the first time. Despite the lack of support from our extended family, my parents instilled in me a relentless work ethic. "No one will hand you anything in life, Cornell," my dad would say. "You have to earn every bit of success." I took those words to heart. In high school, I worked as a busboy at a local restaurant while maintaining straight A's. When college came around, I received a partial scholarship to the University of Illinois, but still had to work multiple jobs to cover tuition and living expenses. I worked at the university library during the day, delivered food in the evenings, and on weekends, I cleaned rooms at a nearby hotel. That hotel job changed everything for me. The manager noticed my work ethic and promoted me to the front desk. During my junior year, I switched my major from general business to hotel management. Something about the hospitality industry clicked with me. I loved the idea of creating spaces where people could feel comfortable, whether for business or pleasure. After graduation, I worked my way up at various hotel chains, learning the business inside and out. By 27, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small, struggling motel outside Chicago. The place was barely staying afloat, but I renovated it room by room, often doing the work myself on weekends. Within 2 years, occupancy went from 40% to consistently booked, and I sold it for nearly triple my investment. I reinvested that money in a slightly larger property, and then another. Each time, I improved the properties and built my reputation in the industry. I created my own brand, Azure Palm Resorts, focusing on affordable luxury. By 34, I owned 7 properties across the country, with my flagship resort in Miami being the crown jewel of my portfolio. Throughout this journey, I maintained minimal contact with Uncle Raymond and his family. My parents had passed away within a year of each other while I was building my second hotel, my dad from a heart attack and my mom from cancer shortly after. At their funerals, Uncle Raymond and his family made brief appearances, offering generic condolences before returning to their privileged lives. The distance between us grew even wider after their passing. So when an email from Aunt Pamela appeared in my inbox, inviting me to a week-long family reunion at the beautiful Azure Palm Resort in Miami, I nearly spat out my coffee. Of all the hotels in all the world, they had chosen mine without having any idea. The email mentioned that several branches of the family would be attending, and they had generously secured accommodations for everyone. I sat at my desk in the corporate office of my Miami hotel, staring at the email. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, revealing my ownership and declining their invitation. But another part, the part that still remembered my father's tears, wanted to see how this would play out. After careful consideration, I decided to accept the invitation without revealing my connection to the hotel. I would attend as just another family member, observe how they treated me, and then decide whether to disclose my success. It would be an experiment in human nature, and I was curious about the results. As the reunion approached, I found myself both dreading and anticipating the encounter. Would they still look down on me? Would they show genuine interest in my life? Had time and maturity changed their perspective? I packed my bags, careful to include a mix of casual clothes and one good suit, just in case. Whatever happened, I was determined to maintain my dignity and see this strange reunion through to its conclusion. The drive to my own hotel felt surreal. I usually entered through the staff entrance or pulled directly into my reserved parking spot near the executive offices. Today, I drove up to the main entrance like any other guest, handing my keys to Thomas, the valet who did a double take before remembering our agreement. "Welcome to Azure Palm Resort, sir," he said professionally, though I could see the question in his eyes. "Thank you," I replied, slipping him a generous tip. Beautiful day. A week earlier, I had called a special meeting with my executive team to explain the unusual situation. My family would be visiting without knowing I owned the place, and I wanted to be treated like any other guest. Jessica, my hotel manager and right-hand person for the past 5 years, thought I was crazy. "Why not just tell them?" she had asked. "Wouldn't that be easier?" "Probably," I admitted, "but I'm curious to see how they treat me when they think I'm still struggling. It's been years since we've really talked." Jessica didn't approve, but she respected my decision and helped coordinate with the staff. The plan was simple. No one would acknowledge me as the owner unless I indicated otherwise. As I entered the lobby of Azure Palm Resort, I took a moment to appreciate the space through fresh eyes. The soaring ceiling with its hand-painted tropical mural, the marble floors imported from Italy, the custom furnishings in soft blues and greens that echoed the ocean visible through the wall of windows at the back. This was my vision brought to life, and despite the circumstances, I felt a surge of pride. "Cornell, there you are." Aunt Pamela's voice cut through my thoughts. She approached wearing a designer sundress and more jewelry than seemed practical for a day of travel. She air-kissed my cheeks, her perfume overwhelming. "Look at you," she said, stepping back to assess me. Her smile tightened slightly at my casual attire, jeans and a simple button-down shirt. "Still dressing like a college student, I see." Before I could respond, Uncle Raymond appeared, still tall but now with a substantial paunch and thinning gray hair. "The prodigal nephew returns," he boomed, clapping me on the shoulder. "How's life treating you, son? Making ends meet?" "I'm doing fine," I said, keeping my response deliberately vague. That's good. Uncle Raymond nodded, clearly not interested in details. "We weren't sure you'd come, what with the cost of flights these days. But family is family, right?" My cousins Madison and Zachary approached next, both tanned and polished. Madison had become a lifestyle blogger with a modest following, according to my pre-reunion research, while Zachary worked at his father-in-law's investment firm. "Cornell," Madison said, giving me a quick hug. "Love the beard. Very hipster barista." Zachary laughed at this, extending his hand. "Good to see you, man. How long has it been? 5 years? 6? 7, I corrected. "Since my mother's funeral." An awkward silence followed, broken by Aunt Pamela clapping her hands. "Well, we're all checked in already. We have the most gorgeous ocean view suites on the 12th floor. The amenities here are just divine, worth every penny. Speaking of which," Uncle Raymond added, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "I managed to get us a family discount. Told them we were considering hosting our company retreat here next year." I raised an eyebrow at this but said nothing. There was no such discount program at my hotel, which meant someone had made an exception, likely assuming it would please the owner if they learned about it later. I made a mental note to address this policy violation during my next management meeting. "Let's get you checked in," Aunt Pamela said, guiding me toward the front desk where Jessica was working, pretending to be just another manager on duty. "Good afternoon," Jessica said professionally. "Welcome to Azure Palm Resort. Checking in?" "Yes, for Cornell Williams," Aunt Pamela answered before I could speak. "He's with our family group." Jessica typed on her computer, then frowned slightly. "Ah, yes, I have you in room 118. I knew immediately what this meant. Room 118 was in the original wing of the hotel, before my extensive renovations. It was tiny, with a view of the service entrance and outdated furnishings. We kept it available primarily for emergency staff accommodations or as a last resort during peak season. It was, without question, the worst room in the entire hotel. Is there a problem? I asked Jessica, curious to see her response. No, sir, she replied, her eyes communicating an apology. That room was specifically requested for your reservation. I turned to look at Aunt Pamela, who suddenly seemed very interested in her manicure. Room 118 is perfect, Uncle Raymond interjected. It's on the ground floor, so no need to bother with elevators. Very convenient. A bellhop arrived to take my luggage, looking uncomfortable as he led me toward the old wing while my family headed toward the elevators that would take them to their luxury suites. As we walked, I overheard Zachary whisper to Madison, "Dad's a genius. Put poor cousin Cornell in the budget room and saved us at least $1,000. Not like he'll know the difference anyway." Madison giggled. "Did you see his shoes? Definitely not designer." The bellhop, one of my newer employees who didn't recognize me, opened the door to room 118. It was exactly as I remembered from my last property inspection. Cramped, with a double bed that sagged in the middle, a bathroom with outdated fixtures, and a window that offered a lovely view of the dumpsters. The air conditioner rattled loudly, struggling against the Miami heat. "Will this be acceptable, sir?" the bellhop asked, setting down my bags. "It's fine," I said, tipping him generously. "Thank you." After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the springs protest beneath me. So this was how they saw me. The poor relation to be tucked away in a substandard room, out of sight and out of mind. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was an opportunity to see my family's true colors without the filter of knowing about my success. I unpacked my belongings, hanging my one good suit in the tiny closet, and resolved to observe and document every interaction over the coming days. They had given me the worst room in my own hotel, but they had also given me invaluable insight into their character, and knowledge, as I had learned throughout my career, was power. After settling into room 118, I sent a text to Jessica, asking her to meet me in the staff corridor near the laundry facilities. It was unlikely any of my family would venture into this area of the hotel. When Jessica arrived, her professional demeanor dropped immediately. "I am so sorry about that room, Cornell. I tried to tell you they were up to something when they made the reservation." "Show me the booking records," I said, maintaining my composure despite my growing irritation. Jessica pulled out her tablet and brought up the family's reservation. Sure enough, while Uncle Raymond, Aunt Pamela, and my cousins had booked Ocean View Suites at $650 per night, they had specifically requested the most economical room possible for me, settling on room 118 at $125 per night, after being informed it was typically reserved for emergencies. "They also asked for the family discount you mentioned," Jessica added, scrolling through the notes. "Thomas in sales gave them 15% off the total bill because they mentioned possibly booking a corporate event later. I've already spoken to him about following proper protocols." "What reason did they give for the different accommodations?" I asked. Jessica looked uncomfortable. "They said you were going through some financial difficulties and would be embarrassed if they got you something too expensive that you couldn't reciprocate. The irony would have been laughable if it weren't so insulting." I thanked Jessica and asked her to continue monitoring the situation discreetly. That evening, we gathered for dinner in the hotel's signature restaurant, Palm Azure Grill. I arrived a few minutes early and noticed my family already seated at one of the best tables overlooking the ocean. Madison was taking photos of the sunset for her social media, while Zachary was deep in conversation with Uncle Raymond about stock portfolios. "Cornell, there you are," Aunt Pamela called, waving me over. "We were just about to order drinks. How was your room? Comfortable?" "Very interesting location," I replied neutrally. "I have a unique view of the hotel operations." Zachary snickered. "I bet. But hey, at least you're not paying for it, right?" "Actually," I began, curious about their reaction. "Who is covering my room?" An awkward silence fell over the table. "Well, we all chipped in," Uncle Raymond finally said. "Consider it our treat. We know times have been tough since your parents passed." I nodded slowly, making a mental note of this statement. "That's very generous. Thank you." The waiter approached to take our orders. I noticed my family members all chose the most expensive items on the menu, with Uncle Raymond selecting a $200 bottle of wine. When the waiter turned to me, I deliberately ordered one of the more moderately priced entrees. "Just water for me," I added when asked about drinks. "Not joining us for wine?" Uncle Raymond asked, eyebrow raised. "I'm being mindful of the bill," I replied, "since you're being so generous with the accommodations." Another uncomfortable silence descended, broken by Madison changing the subject to their planned excursions for the week. Tomorrow we're doing a private yacht tour of the bay, she explained excitedly. Then the next day we have a helicopter ride over the Everglades booked. That sounds amazing, I said. What time should I be ready? The family exchanged glances. Oh, Cornell, Aunt Pamela said with forced sympathy. Those activities are quite expensive. We didn't think you'd want to. Well, we didn't include you in those bookings. But there's a lovely public beach, just a short walk from the hotel. Very affordable. I understand, I said, smiling politely while internally documenting yet another slight. Throughout dinner, I listened as they discussed inheritance matters related to a great aunt who had recently passed away, family business opportunities that deliberately excluded me, and plans for future luxury vacations. Each conversation seemed calculated to emphasize the divide between us. I participated minimally, observing their dynamics and occasionally asking questions that revealed their assumptions about my financial situation. As dessert was served, Aunt Pamela leaned over with what appeared to be genuine concern. Cornell, if you need some extra money, I noticed they're hiring additional waitstaff here at the hotel. The manager seems very nice. I'd be happy to put in a word. I nearly choked on my coffee. Thank you, Aunt Pamela, but I'm doing fine with my current employment. What exactly do you do these days? Uncle Raymond asked, seemingly noticing for the first time that he had no idea about my career. I'm in hotel management, I replied truthfully. Oh, like a front desk clerk? Madison asked. Something like that, I answered vaguely. Well, it's stable work, Uncle Raymond said condescendingly. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur or investment banker. The world needs all types. As dinner concluded, I excused myself and returned to my substandard room. I pulled out my notebook and meticulously recorded every comment, every exclusion, every subtle and not so subtle dig at my perceived financial status. Then I began forming a plan. The next morning, I met with Jessica before my family was awake. We reviewed the security camera footage from the restaurant, which had captured several key moments from dinner, including Aunt Pamela's suggestion that I apply for a waitstaff position. I want to gather more evidence before I make my move, I told Jessica. Keep the staff on alert, but maintain the charade. I need to see just how far they'll take this. Over the next 2 days, I continued my documentation. My family left for their yacht excursion without me, posting dozens of photos on social media. I was excluded from their helicopter tour as well. During group meals, they discussed their spa treatments and golf outings at length, never once inviting me to join. On the third evening, I overheard a conversation that solidified my resolve. I was returning to my room when I passed by the hotel bar and noticed my family in a corner booth, drinks in hand. I positioned myself nearby, hidden by a large tropical plant. I still can't believe Cornell never made anything of himself, Uncle Raymond was saying, his words slightly slurred from alcohol. My brother always had big dreams for him. It's sad, really, Aunt Pamela agreed. No ambition, no vision. Should we invite him to dinner tomorrow? Madison asked. I suppose we have to, Zachary replied. But let's eat at that cheap Cuban place down the street. He's probably uncomfortable in nice restaurants anyway. And we'll leave early the next day, Uncle Raymond added. No point extending this awkward reunion. We can stick him with the incidental charges for his room. Not like he'll notice an extra $100 or so. I'd heard enough. As they continued their character assassination, I slipped away to finalize my plan with Jessica and the executive team. It was time to reveal who really owned the Azure Palm Resort, and I intended to make it a moment they would never forget. On the morning of day 4, my plans were temporarily derailed by an actual hotel emergency. Jessica called my cell phone at 6 a.m., her voice tense. Cornell, I know you're trying to keep a low profile with your family, but we have a situation. The cooling system for the East Wing has failed, and the manufacturer needs authorization from the owner for the emergency repair costs. I glanced at the clock. My family had mentioned plans to visit the beach around 10 a.m., giving me a window to handle this without blowing my cover. I'll be right there. Meet me in the maintenance area. I slipped out of room 118 and made my way through the service corridors to the maintenance department. For the next 3 hours, I worked with our engineering team and the HVAC contractor to authorize repairs and implement a solution for affected guests. We offered complimentary spa services and cabanas to those inconvenienced, turning a potential disaster into an opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to guest satisfaction. Just as we finalized the arrangements, Jessica received a call from the front desk. Your uncle is causing a scene in the lobby, she whispered, covering the phone. Something about slow service at breakfast. I checked my watch. It was 9:45 a.m., meaning I had just enough time to return to my room, change clothes, and pretend I'd been there all morning. I thanked the maintenance team and hurried back through the service corridors. When I joined my family in the lobby 15 minutes later, I found Uncle Raymond berating a young front desk employee. "This is unacceptable," he was saying loudly. "We've been waiting for our beach cabana for 30 minutes. Do you know how much we're paying to stay here?" "Actually, less than the standard rate," I thought to myself as I approached. "Good morning," I said cheerfully. "What's going on?" "This place is falling apart," Uncle Raymond complained. "Breakfast service was glacial, and now they've lost our cabana reservation." The employee, Sophia, looked close to tears. I knew she was new and still training. "I'm sure there's a simple explanation," I said, smiling reassuringly at Sophia. "Perhaps I can help. I do have some experience in hotel operations." "You work at a budget motel by the airport," Zachary scoffed. "This is a luxury resort, different league entirely." I bit my tongue and turned to Sophia. "May I?" I asked, gesturing to her computer terminal. She looked relieved and stepped aside. I quickly located the cabana reservation, which had been properly entered, but assigned to the wrong section of the beach. "Here we are," I said. "There was a small mix-up with the location. I've corrected it, and I typed in an authorization code. I've added a complimentary bottle of champagne for your inconvenience." Sophia looked at me with wide eyes, recognizing the owner authorization code but saying nothing. "Well," Aunt Pamela said, surprised. "That was impressive, Cornell. Maybe you should apply for a job here after all." I smiled tightly, just trying to help. The family departed for the beach, with Uncle Raymond still grumbling about service standards. I stayed behind to check on Sophia. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Williams," she began. "It's not your fault," I assured her. "And please, continue treating me like a regular guest. The revelation is coming soon enough." The rest of the day brought more evidence of my family's behavior. While lounging by the pool that afternoon, I witnessed Madison spill a full glass of red wine on one of our custom-designed lounge chairs. Instead of reporting it, she simply flipped the cushion over and moved to a different spot. The stain would cost hundreds to repair or replace. That evening, we had dinner at the hotel's rooftop restaurant. I noticed my family deliberately excluded me from their group photos, with Aunt Pamela suggesting I take the pictures instead. Throughout the meal, they discussed plans to visit a nightclub later, again without extending an invitation. As coffee was served, I excused myself to use the restroom and instead slipped away to meet Jessica in my office. "I've had enough," I told her. "Let's implement the plan tomorrow at breakfast. The presidential suite is ready whenever you want it," she confirmed. "And I've briefed the key staff members on their roles." "Perfect. Make sure Thomas from valet, Sophia from the front desk, and Ricardo from the restaurant are all available tomorrow morning. I want witnesses from every department that experienced their behavior." Back at dinner, I returned just in time to overhear the final insult of the evening. "I think we should leave a day early," Uncle Raymond was saying. "This place is overrated and overpriced. We can tell Cornell there was a change of plans due to work. He can handle the checkout himself." "What about his room charges?" Madison asked. "What about them?" Zachary shrugged. "Consider it a family tax for him being, well, him." I cleared my throat as I retook my seat. The conversation abruptly shifted to the weather. That night, back in room 118, I laid out my one good suit and made final preparations. Tomorrow would change everything, and I wanted to be ready. I reviewed my documentation one last time. The room assignment, the exclusion from activities, the condescending comments, the plan to leave me with extra charges. Each offense was minor in isolation, but together they painted a clear picture of how little my family thought of me. As I set my alarm, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and sadness. Part of me hoped they would show genuine remorse when the truth was revealed. Another part just wanted to see the looks on their faces when they realized whose hotel they had been enjoying while treating me like an afterthought. Either way, breakfast tomorrow would be an event none of us would soon forget. I woke up earlier than necessary the next morning, partly from anticipation, and partly because the ancient air conditioner in room 118 had given up sometime during the night. I showered in the cramped bathroom, carefully shaved, and put on my tailored suit, a far cry from the casual clothes I'd been wearing all week. The suit was Italian, custom-made during my last business trip to Milan, and cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. I completed the look with a designer watch and leather shoes that cost more than what my family probably assumed I earned in a month. Looking in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself compared to the deliberately casual persona I'd been projecting. This was the real Cornell Williams, successful, polished, and about to reclaim his dignity. At precisely 8:30 a.m., I entered the main restaurant where my family had already gathered for breakfast. They were seated at their usual table, engaged in conversation about their plans to depart early. None of them noticed me at first, giving me a moment to signal Ricardo, the restaurant manager, who nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Cornell? Madison was the first to spot me, her eyes widening at my transformation. Wow, you clean up well. What's the occasion? Good morning, I said, taking the empty seat at their table. I thought it was time for a change. Job interview? Uncle Raymond asked, looking skeptical. That suit looks expensive. Rental? Something like that, I replied cryptically. Aunt Pamela studied me with newfound interest. You look different, more confident. Before I could respond, Ricardo approached our table with a silver ice bucket containing a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne, followed by 2 servers carrying flutes for everyone. Good morning, Williams family, Ricardo said formally. Compliments of the house. We didn't order champagne, Uncle Raymond stated, though he made no move to refuse it. It's a special occasion, Ricardo explained, popping the cork with expert precision. As the servers poured, he continued, Azure Palm Resort would like to formally acknowledge and welcome a very important guest at your table this morning. My family exchanged confused glances. Ladies and gentlemen, Ricardo announced loud enough for nearby tables to hear. It is our great honor to have with us today Mr. Cornell Williams, founder and owner of Azure Palm Resorts International, and the visionary behind this very property. The silence that followed was absolute. 4 pairs of eyes turned to me in perfect synchronization, expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. There must be some mistake, Uncle Raymond finally sputtered. Cornell is my nephew. He works at, he's not. I smiled and raised my champagne glass. To family reunions, they're always so revealing, aren't they? As if on cue, Jessica appeared with a small entourage of department heads. Mr. Williams, she said professionally, I apologize for interrupting your breakfast, but we have the quarterly projections ready for your review whenever you're available. Thank you, Jessica, I replied. I'll stop by the office after breakfast. The blood had drained from Aunt Pamela's face. Madison was frantically checking her phone, presumably searching for information about me online. Zachary looked like he might be ill. You own this place? He finally managed to ask. This one and 6 others across the country, I confirmed. The Miami property is our flagship resort, which is why I maintain my primary residence here. Your primary residence? Aunt Pamela repeated weakly. Yes, in the owner's penthouse. Not in room 118, which is technically classified as emergency staff housing, not a guest room. Interesting choice for family accommodations, by the way. Uncle Raymond found his voice. Cornell, this is. We had no idea you were so successful. Why didn't you tell us? We would have treated you differently. Precisely, I said, cutting him off. You would have treated me differently if you had known I was wealthy. That says everything about your character and nothing about mine. Several business people in suits approached our table. Cornell, one of them called. We just finished our property tour. Remarkable vision you have for the new building. I'll join you momentarily, James, I responded, recognizing the commercial real estate developer I'd been negotiating with. We're still on for golf this afternoon, correct? Absolutely. Your membership at Paradise Pines is the envy of everyone in my office. As they moved away, the contrast became even more stark. My family, who had excluded me from their activities all week, watching as actual wealthy and influential people sought my company. I don't understand, Aunt Pamela said, finding her voice. If you knew we were coming to your hotel, why didn't you say something? Why let us treat you like? Like what, Aunt Pamela? I asked quietly. Like family? Is that not how you treat family? Or do you only treat family well when there's something to gain? Uncle Raymond attempted damage control. Now, Cornell, perhaps we've had some misunderstandings. Your success is remarkable, truly. We should discuss some potential family business ventures. I have several ideas that could benefit from your resources. I stood up from the table. I'll be moving to the presidential suite for the remainder of my stay. Jessica has prepared a detailed bill for your rooms, including the charges for the wine stain on the custom lounge cushion. The late-night room service Madison ordered to room 943 that was conveniently left off the initial bill and the missing decorative towels from Zachary's bathroom. "You've been spying on us," Madison gasped. "No," I corrected her. "I've been receiving normal reports about unusual guest behavior, as any hotel owner would. The fact that the guests in question happened to be family was educational." "Now, Cornell," Uncle Raymond began, his tone conciliatory. "Surely we can discuss this privately. There's no need to make a scene. You seemed comfortable making a scene when you berated Sophia at the front desk yesterday," I pointed out. "But you're right. We should continue this conversation somewhere more private. Would you all care to join me for a tour of my property? I'd be happy to show you exactly what I've built while you were assuming I was a failure." Their expressions were a mixture of shame, shock, and rapidly calculating opportunism. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away, signaling to Jessica to escort them to the administrative wing when they were ready. The revelation had gone exactly as planned, but instead of the satisfaction I had anticipated, I felt a strange hollowness. Exposing their true nature had been necessary, but it confirmed what I had suspected all along. To them, I was only worth what I could provide. As I headed toward my office, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. My family was following, no doubt eager to re-establish themselves in my good graces now that they knew my true worth. The real test was just beginning. The tour of my hotel was an exercise in uncomfortable silence, punctuated by desperate attempts at conversation from my family members. I showed them the administrative offices where a large portrait of me hung in the main conference room, the state-of-the-art kitchens where chefs greeted me by name, and finally, the presidential suite where my belongings were being transferred. "This is where you actually stay when you're here?" Madison asked, eyes wide, as she took in the 2,000-square-foot luxury accommodation with panoramic ocean views, private terrace, and custom furnishings. "When I'm not at my home in Coral Gables," I replied casually. "The suite is more convenient when I'm working late." The presidential suite cost $3,000 per night during peak season. It featured a living room larger than my parents' entire apartment, a dining area that could seat 8, a master bedroom with a custom king bed, a guest bedroom, 3 bathrooms with Italian marble, and a kitchen with professional-grade appliances. The private terrace included a hot tub and unobstructed views of the Atlantic. As we entered, hotel staff were arranging fresh flowers, setting out a fruit basket, and stocking the refrigerator with my preferred beverages. "Good morning, Mr. Williams," they greeted me respectfully. "Is there anything specific you require for your stay?" "Everything looks perfect, thank you," I replied. Uncle Raymond cleared his throat. "Cornell, this is quite impressive. You've obviously done very well for yourself." "Despite the lack of family support," I added, unable to resist the dig. Aunt Pamela flinched but quickly recovered. "We always knew you had potential, Cornell. Your father would be so proud." The mention of my father ignited a flash of anger that I carefully contained. My father would be proud that I remembered what he taught me. Character matters more than wealth, and how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer reveals who you truly are. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Zachary, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. "So what happens now? Are you kicking us out?" "No," I replied. "You're welcome to complete your stay as planned. The accommodations you selected and paid for are yours until checkout." "About the payment," Uncle Raymond began tentatively. "Given the circumstances, perhaps we could discuss a family discount?" Jessica, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, couldn't quite suppress her snort of disbelief. "The circumstances being what, exactly?" I asked, my voice level. "That you deliberately chose the worst room in the hotel for me while enjoying luxury yourselves. That you excluded me from activities. That you plan to leave early and stick me with additional charges? We would never have done that if we'd known who you were," Aunt Pamela protested. "And that's precisely the problem," I replied. "You shouldn't treat anyone that way, regardless of who they are or what they can do for you." The rest of the day unfolded in a bizarre new reality. Word had spread quickly among the staff, and my family's treatment subtly shifted. Nothing unprofessional, but the warm, personalized service was replaced with correct but cool efficiency. That evening, I hosted a dinner in the hotel's private dining room for some of my business associates and local friends. I deliberately invited my family, placing them at the table with people of actual influence and accomplishment. Throughout the dinner, I watched them struggle to adapt to this new dynamic, where they were not the most successful or important people in the room. Uncle Raymond attempted to insert himself into a conversation about real estate development, only to reveal his limited understanding of the subject. Madison tried to impress a fashion editor from a major magazine, only to be politely but firmly corrected on several industry facts. Zachary, at least, had the sense to mostly listen and ask occasional questions. After dinner, Uncle Raymond cornered me by the bar. "Cornell, I think we need to clear the air," he began. "Your success is incredible, truly. And it's made me realize that perhaps I misjudged your potential." "Perhaps," I agreed neutrally. "I'd like to discuss some opportunities," he continued, undeterred. "Your hotel experience combined with my business connections could create some interesting synergies. I know several investors who would be interested in backing a joint venture." I studied him for a moment. "Uncle Raymond, your business connections didn't seem valuable enough to share with me when I was struggling through college or building my first property. Why would they interest me now?" "People make mistakes," he said, lowering his voice. "I misjudged the situation. But we're family, and family should work together, support each other." "I couldn't agree more," I replied. "Family should support each other. Where was that belief when my father asked for help with car repairs, or when my mother was ill and needed assistance with medical bills?" He had no answer for this, just an uncomfortable shuffle and a change of subject. "Your cousins were hoping to extend their stay a few days. Now that we know about your position, we thought it might be a good opportunity to reconnect properly." "I'm sorry to disappoint them," I said. "Not sorry at all. But we have a conference booking arriving tomorrow that requires all our Ocean View suites. Your original departure date stands." As the evening concluded, I returned to the presidential suite alone, reflecting on the day's events. There was satisfaction in finally being seen for my accomplishments, but it was hollow knowing that the recognition came only because of what I could now offer them. The next morning, I arranged for their bill to be prepared and delivered to their rooms. I had instructed Jessica to charge them the standard rates for everything, removing the unauthorized family discount and adding the costs for the damaged property and services they had attempted to conceal. When I met them in the lobby for checkout, Uncle Raymond was red-faced, waving the bill. "This is outrageous," he sputtered. "Nearly $12,000 for 4 days? And what's this $600 charge for furnishing damage?" "The wine stain on the custom lounge cushion by the pool," I explained calmly. "Our interior designer had them handmade in Italy. Quite irreplaceable, actually." "But the family discount," Aunt Pamela protested. "Was never authorized," I finished for her. "Azure Palm Resorts doesn't offer family discounts, only legitimate corporate rates for verified business clients. Since your company has no intention of hosting events here, that wouldn't apply." "You're charging us full price?" Zachary asked incredulously. "After everything?" "After everything," I confirmed. "I'm charging you exactly what any other guest would pay for the services and accommodations you enjoyed. Nothing more, nothing less." The look of outrage on their faces was almost comical. They had expected special treatment now that they knew my position, and receiving the same treatment as any other guest felt like punishment. "This is how you treat family?" Uncle Raymond demanded, his face flushed. "No," I corrected him. "This is how I treat valued guests. How I treat family would have been to welcome you warmly regardless of my success, include everyone in activities, and ensure everyone had comfortable accommodations. But that option was taken off the table when you made your initial choices." As they prepared to depart, defeated and considerably poorer, Madison lingered behind while the others loaded their luggage. "Cornell," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology. What we did was wrong. I knew it was wrong even before we found out about all this." She gestured vaguely at the hotel around us. "I went along with it because it was easier than standing up to Dad. But that's not an excuse." Her words seemed sincere, and for the first time since this reunion began, I saw a glimpse of genuine remorse. "Apology accepted," I said after a moment. "Perhaps next time, you'll remember that how we treat people when there's nothing to gain is the true measure of our character." She nodded, looking thoughtful, and joined the others in their rental car. As they drove away, I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication, sadness, and a strange sense of freedom. The family that had once made me feel small and insignificant no longer held that power over me. Whether they had truly learned anything from this experience remained to be seen, but I had definitely learned something about myself. In the days following my family's departure, I found myself in a contemplative mood. The satisfaction of revealing my success had faded quickly, leaving me questioning whether the elaborate charade had been worth it. I had proven my point, but at what cost to my own peace of mind? "You seem distracted," Jessica noted as we reviewed the weekly operations report in my office. "Still thinking about your family?" I am, I admitted. I thought exposing their behavior would feel more conclusive. Jessica set down her tablet and regarded me thoughtfully. Revenge rarely brings the closure we expect, Cornell. It's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. That's a bit dramatic, I chuckled, though her words resonated. It wasn't revenge exactly, more like a reality check. For them or for you? She asked pointedly. The question lingered with me throughout the day. Had I orchestrated this scenario to teach them a lesson or to prove something to myself? The truth was probably somewhere in between. That evening, as I sat on the terrace of the presidential suite, watching the sunset over the ocean, my phone rang with an unfamiliar local number. Cornell Williams speaking. I answered professionally. Cornell, it's Madison. Her voice was hesitant. I'm still in Miami. I told the others I wanted to stay a few extra days to meet with some lifestyle bloggers. But the truth is, I needed to talk to you again. Properly this time. I was surprised but curious. Where are you staying? A small hotel near the airport, she replied with a self-deprecating laugh. Significantly less impressive than yours, but it fits my actual budget, not the one Dad pretends we have. This piqued my interest. What do you mean? Madison sighed heavily. Can we meet? This isn't really a phone conversation. An hour later, we sat in a quiet corner of a local coffee shop, away from my hotel. Madison looked different somehow, less polished and more authentic, without the performative affluence she had displayed during the family gathering. Dad's business has been struggling for years, she began without preamble. The car dealerships aren't doing well in the current economy, and he's leveraged to the hilt trying to maintain appearances. That vacation was put on credit cards. The lifestyle we project is mostly smoke and mirrors these days. I was genuinely surprised by this revelation. I had no idea. No one does. That's the point. Madison stirred her coffee absently. Dad is terrified of appearing anything less than successful. When we got the bill from your hotel, he nearly had a panic attack in the parking lot. Is that why you stayed behind? To ask for a discount after all? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. No, she said firmly. I stayed to apologize properly and to explain, not excuse, some of what happened. The truth is, Dad has always been jealous of your father. Uncle James was the smart one, the kind one. Dad was just the lucky one who married into money, and he's been insecure about it his entire life. That doesn't justify how they treated me, I pointed out. Nothing could justify it, Madison agreed readily. It was cruel and petty. But Dad's insecurity went into overdrive when he realized we'd be seeing you. He was convinced you'd judge him if his perfect facade slipped even a little. So he decided to make me feel small first? Madison nodded sadly. Preemptive strike. Classic Dad move. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Madison shared insights into the family dynamics I had never understood, including her parents' marriage troubles and Zachary's struggles with anxiety and imposter syndrome in his father-in-law's company. None of it excused their behavior, but it painted a more complex picture than the simple rich versus poor narrative I had constructed. What will you do now? I asked, as our conversation wound down. Madison looked thoughtful. Start over, in a way. I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not. My blog barely breaks even, but I love writing it. I'm thinking of pivoting to focus on affordable travel and authentic experiences rather than luxury lifestyle content I can't actually afford. That sounds more fulfilling, I observed. It would be, she agreed. And you? Will you ever speak to the family again? I considered the question carefully. I'm not sure. Not on the same terms, certainly, but perhaps with new boundaries and expectations. When we parted, Madison hugged me genuinely. Thank you for listening, and for the wake-up call, however harsh it was. Sometimes we need to see ourselves through someone else's eyes to recognize what we've become. In the months that followed, I reflected deeply on the experience and what it had taught me. The revelation of my success had been satisfying in the moment, but the real value came from the clarity it provided about relationships, worth, and authentic connections. 6 months after the disastrous family reunion, I decided to host a small gathering at my parents' old apartment building in Chicago, which I had purchased and renovated into affordable housing for working families. I sent invitations to my extended family, making it clear there would be no luxury accommodations, no exclusive activities, just a simple meal and conversation. To my surprise, Madison was the first to accept. Zachary followed, though he asked if he could bring his wife. Uncle Raymond and Aunt Pamela declined initially, but changed their minds at the last minute, perhaps realizing this was their last chance to mend fences. The gathering was awkward at first, with Uncle Raymond unusually subdued, and Aunt Pamela clearly uncomfortable in the modest surroundings. But as the evening progressed, something shifted. Without the pressure of maintaining appearances, more authentic conversations emerged. Madison shared her new blog direction, which was already gaining traction. Zachary admitted his dissatisfaction with his career path and asked for my advice about hospitality management programs. Uncle Raymond remained distant, but Aunt Pamela made a genuine effort, sharing stories about my father from their childhood that I had never heard before. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. Not all relationships could or should be salvaged. Uncle Raymond and I maintained a cordial but distant connection, his pride too wounded and his character too entrenched to truly change. But Madison became a regular part of my life, and even Zachary showed signs of growth as he pursued a career he actually enjoyed rather than one that matched his father's expectations. The most meaningful outcome of this experience, however, wasn't family reconciliation but the scholarship foundation I established in my parents' names. The foundation provided educational opportunities for underprivileged students pursuing careers in hospitality, ensuring that others with ambition but limited resources could find their path forward. Looking back, I realized that success had never been about proving my worth to those who undervalued me. True success came from remaining true to the values my parents had instilled: hard work, integrity, and treating people with dignity regardless of their status or wealth. The worst room in my hotel had ultimately given me the best perspective. It reminded me where I came from and showed me who truly deserved a place in my future. Sometimes, the people who value you at your perceived worst are worth infinitely more than those who only acknowledge you at your visible best. Have you ever been underestimated by family or friends, only to prove them wrong later? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. No matter where you are in your journey, remember that your worth isn't determined by others' perceptions. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need this reminder today. Thank you for joining me for this personal story. And remember, the best revenge isn't showing others what they missed out on. It's living your most authentic and fulfilling life without needing their approval.